The day my cousin's wedding invitation arrived, I almost left. Not because I was happy. Because my name was spelled wrong. 28 years of being part of this family, and they still put an extra N in my name on a custom-printed gold-embossed envelope. That should have told me everything I needed to know about how much I actually mattered to them. My name is Serena Walsh. And for most of my adult life, I've been the family's favorite cautionary tale. I grew up in a house where the refrigerator had a list on it, not groceries. Achievements: my older brother Derek's GPA, my cousin Preston's internship at a law firm, my aunt's promotion. My mother kept that list updated like it was a living document, and for a long time, I thought I just hadn't done anything worth adding yet. Then I became an electrician, and I realized the list wasn't the problem. I was. Not because I failed, because I chose something they couldn't frame on a wall. I got my apprenticeship license at 22 after 2 years of trade school. By 25, I had my journeyman's license. By 27, I was running my own small electrical contracting company, Walsh Electric Solutions, out of a rented office in Dayton, Ohio. 4 employees, decent contracts, steady income, health insurance I paid for myself, a truck I owned outright. None of that made the refrigerator list. What I heard at family dinners instead was things like, "So you're still doing the wiring thing?" From my uncle, who said it the same way you'd ask someone if they were still seeing a person you never thought was good enough for them. Or my aunt, who once said in front of 7 people at Thanksgiving, "I just worry about you, sweetheart, all that physical labor. What happens when your body can't keep up?" I was 26 when she said that. My mother never defended me. She'd change the subject or laugh lightly and say something like, "Serena's always been independent," as though independence were a polite way of saying lost. My father was quieter about it, but silence has its own weight, and I felt his every time I mentioned a new contract or a certification I'd earned. He'd nod. Say good. Go back to his food. My brother Derek got 15-minute conversations about his marketing job. I got good. I told myself it didn't matter. I had friends who understood what I did. I had coworkers who respected me. I had customers who called me back and referred me to their neighbors. That was real. That counted. But there is something that happens to you when the people who were supposed to be your first audience, the ones who were supposed to see you before the rest of the world did, look right through you for long enough. You start to wonder if maybe they see something you don't. I'm not proud of how long I let that wondering live in me. But I'm telling you this because I want you to understand where I was when I found out what they were planning. I wasn't in a place of strength. I was tired, and I had spent years trying to prove something to people who had already made up their minds. My cousin Preston was getting married in June. His fiancée, a woman named Adrian, was sweet and nervous and clearly overwhelmed by the size of the family she was marrying into. The wedding was a big deal. 300 guests, a venue outside Columbus, catered dinner, open bar, a DJ who was apparently very in demand. My aunt had been planning it for 14 months. I was invited, barely. My invitation came 3 weeks after everyone else's, and I only know that because my mother mentioned it casually. "Oh, yours must have gotten delayed in the mail," in a tone that made it clear she didn't fully believe that either. I RSVP'd yes, bought a dress, arranged to take the Saturday off. 6 weeks before the wedding, I drove to my parents' house for my niece's birthday party. Derek's daughter, 4 years old, obsessed with horses. I was early. The front door was unlocked, which it always was on weekends, so I let myself in. My mother and my aunt were in the kitchen. My uncle was somewhere in the back. I was halfway down the hall when I heard my name. I stopped. I know I should have kept walking. I know that. But something in my aunt's tone, low and purposeful, the voice she used when she was organizing something, made my feet stop moving. "Preston wants to do the slideshow tribute after the first dance," she was saying. "I told him we could work Serena into it. The humble beginnings angle." My mother laughed, but it was a careful laugh. "What do you mean?" "You know, the family success story. Derek with his BP track, Preston with the law degree, and then a pause. Serena with her little tool belt. It's funny. It's relatable. People love a contrast. Silence. She won't know until it's playing, my aunt added. 300 people. It'll be on the big screen. We'll frame it nicely, something like every family has its own path. But everyone will understand what it means. I stood in that hallway for what felt like a very long time. My mother didn't say no. What she said was, just make sure it doesn't look mean-spirited. I walked back out the front door, got in my truck, sat in the driveway for 10 minutes. Then I drove home. Here's what I want you to understand about what I felt in those 10 minutes. It wasn't just hurt. Hurt, I was used to. Hurt was a familiar, manageable thing by then. What I felt was something closer to a door closing. A quiet, final sound. The kind you don't notice until the room goes cold. I had spent years telling myself that my family's attitude toward my work was a misunderstanding. That if I just achieved enough, explained enough, they'd eventually see it. That the problem was a gap in perspective, not a gap in how much they valued me. In that car, I understood that there was no amount of achievement that was going to change what I was to them. I was the contrast. The humble beginnings. The thing that made everyone else look better by comparison. And they had decided to put that on a screen in front of 300 people without asking me. I didn't cry. I think I was past crying about it by then. What I did when I got home was make a cup of coffee and sit at my kitchen table and think very carefully. The thinking is where everything changed. Because sitting at that table, I started doing what I always do when I'm working a job. I started looking at the actual structure of things, and what I saw, when I really looked at it, was something my family had apparently forgotten. Walsh Electric Solutions had been contracted by a property management company called Clearstone Properties for the past 2 years. Clearstone managed a portfolio of commercial spaces around the greater Columbus area. One of those spaces, a 4,200 square foot suite on the second floor of an office building off Henderson Road, had been leased to a small consulting firm. That consulting firm was my uncle's business. My uncle, Robert, ran a financial consulting practice. He'd moved his office to that Henderson Road location 14 months ago. I remembered when Clearstone first contracted me. They needed the electrical panel in that building upgraded, plus new lighting in several suites. I'd done the work, got paid, moved on. I didn't connect my uncle's business to that building until much later, when I saw the suite number on some paperwork. I pulled up the Clearstone portal that night and confirmed it. My uncle's firm, Hartley Consulting Group, was in Suite 204, the suite directly below the one I'd rewired. I wasn't their landlord, I want to be clear about that. I didn't own the building. But I'd done the electrical work, which meant I had the contractor records, the inspection documentation, and, because Clearstone had made me a point of contact for that building's ongoing maintenance, I had access to the service history. That's not leverage, not by itself. But here's what was leverage. 4 months ago, Clearstone had flagged Suite 204 for an unresolved service call, a breaker issue. Potential code problem. They'd asked me to go assess it. I'd gone, identified the issue, submitted the report. The repair had been scheduled, then delayed, because the tenant, meaning my uncle's firm, had declined to provide access for 2 scheduled service appointments. There was a 3rd appointment pending, still unresolved. If that issue wasn't addressed before the city's next inspection cycle, which was in September, Clearstone would be required to disclose it, and the tenant could face lease complications. I sat with that for a while. I wasn't going to do anything dishonest. I wasn't going to fabricate anything or threaten anyone. I'm not built that way, and honestly, that's not even what this needed. What this needed was a lot simpler than that. It needed me to stop pretending I was less than I was. The week after I heard my aunt in the kitchen, I called Clearstone and confirmed the status of the Suite 204 service issue. Then I drafted a professional notice, contractor language, calm, factual, outlining the outstanding service access problem, the timeline, and the potential code implications if unresolved before September. I copied myself and Clearstone's property manager on the email. Then I did something else. I had never told my family the full scope of what my business actually did. Not because I was hiding it, but because no one had ever asked in a way that suggested they actually wanted to know. They knew I did wiring. They didn't know that Walsh Electric Solutions held contracts with 4 commercial property management companies, had completed over 200 residential and commercial jobs in 3 years, carried a $2 million liability policy, and grossed, last year, just over $340,000. They didn't know that I had, in the ordinary course of doing my job, worked on a building that housed my uncle's business. They didn't know that I knew. I wrote a letter. Not an angry letter. Not a letter designed to humiliate anyone, because that was never the point, and it's not who I am. It was a letter that said what was true. I told them I had heard the conversation in the hallway. I told them I understood what they were planning. I told them I wasn't going to be at the wedding. Not because I was punishing them, but because I was done attending events where I was expected to be the punchline. And then, not as a threat, but as a simple disclosure of facts that were professionally relevant, I mentioned the building. I told my uncle that I was aware his firm was a tenant at the Henderson Road property, that there was an unresolved electrical service issue on file, and that I'd be happy to discuss the scheduling directly, as the contracted electrician whenever he was ready. I didn't say, I could have let this get worse. I didn't say, you're in my world now. I didn't have to. The facts said it. I mailed the letter on a Tuesday. 1 copy to my parents' house, addressed to the family. 1 separate copy to my uncle at his office. I went about my week. I had a job in Westerville, a small retail build-out new lighting installation. I spent Wednesday and Thursday on ladders, running conduit, testing circuits. It was good work. The kind of work where your brain goes quiet and your hands know what to do, and at the end of the day there's something that functions correctly that didn't before. I love that about my job. I don't think I've ever found a way to explain that to my family, but I love it more than I can say. On Friday evening, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again 20 minutes later. I answered. Serena. Her voice was tight. Not crying. My mother doesn't cry when she's upset. She gets very controlled, very careful, like she's picking her way across ice. We got your letter. Okay, I said. She stopped, started again. I don't understand why you're doing this. I had thought about this conversation. I'd thought about it all week, actually, between running wire and drinking bad coffee out of a thermos on a job site. I'd thought about all the things I could say, all the ways I could explain myself, lay out my case, make her see. I didn't do any of that. Mom, I said, did you read the whole thing? A pause. Yes. Then you understand. Serena, the slideshow wasn't meant to… I know what it was meant to do, I said. I heard you in the kitchen. She didn't answer. I'm not coming to the wedding, I said. I hope Preston and Adrian have a wonderful day. I genuinely mean that. But I'm not going to sit in a room with 300 people while my family uses me as a joke. It wasn't going to be a joke. What was it going to be then? Silence. I've been doing this work for 6 years, I said. I run a licensed insured electrical contracting company. I have employees. I pay taxes. I have never, not once, asked anyone in this family for money or help or anything. And you were going to put me on a screen as the family's funny footnote. Your aunt suggested it. You didn't say no. Another silence. Longer this time. I know you think what I do isn't impressive, I said. I know it doesn't fit whatever picture you had. But I need you to understand something. I worked on the building where Uncle Robert has his office. I'm the electrician on that account. I didn't tell anyone because it never came up and it wasn't anyone's business. But it's true. And there's a service issue at that property that's been sitting unresolved for 4 months because someone at his firm kept canceling the appointments. I need that fixed before September or it becomes a code problem. I could hear her breathing. I'm telling you that not as a threat. I'm telling you because it's a professional matter and it needs to be handled. And apparently the way to get this family to pay attention to what I do is to make it directly relevant to them. I paused. I'll be available to schedule the repair whenever your brother decides he's ready. There was a long, strange silence. Then my mother said, very quietly, I didn't know that was your account. I know, I said. Nobody asks. I got off the phone and stood in my kitchen for a minute. My cat was sitting on the counter looking at me with the specific indifference that cats have mastered and humans pretend not to envy. I gave him a piece of deli turkey and sat down on the floor with my back against the cabinet, which is where I go when I need to process something big without performing the processing for an audience. Here is what I felt. Not triumphant. Not vindicated. Something more complicated and quieter than either of those things. Something like the feeling you get when a piece of work is finally done. The project is closed, the circuits are live, the inspection is passed. A job completed. Not celebrated, just done. My uncle called the following Monday and scheduled the electrical repair. He was professional about it. Formal, even. He confirmed the date and time, gave me the access code for the suite, asked about parking. At no point did he acknowledge the letter or the wedding or the conversation in the hallway. Neither did I. We talked for 4 minutes about an electrical panel and that was the extent of it. The repair took my team 6 hours. We documented everything, pulled the updated inspection paperwork, and closed the ticket with Clearstone. I sent my uncle an invoice through our standard billing system. He paid it in full within 2 weeks. I didn't go to Preston's wedding. I heard from my sister-in-law, Derek's wife, who is one of the few people in my extended family who has always treated me like a full human being, that the slideshow was different than planned. She said there was no contrast segment. She said my name wasn't mentioned. She said Preston gave a speech about family that was apparently very moving, though she seemed uncertain whether it was genuine or whether it was the champagne. I didn't ask for a full report. I didn't want one. What I know is this. A few weeks after the wedding, my mother called again. This time, she didn't open with anything about the letter or the slideshow or the wedding. She asked how work was going. I told her about the Westerville job and the new commercial contract I'd just signed with a property group in Dublin, Ohio, and the fact that I was hiring a 5th electrician in the fall. She listened. All the way through. And at the end she said, "That's really good, Serena. That's really impressive." I said, "Thank you." I didn't tell her that those were the words I'd been waiting for 6 years. I didn't make a thing of it. She said them and I took them and we talked for another 15 minutes about nothing in particular. That was enough. Not everything, but enough. Here's what I've learned. For whatever it's worth, the people who dismiss what you do are, more often than you'd think, the people who are standing on something you built. They just haven't bothered to look down. I'm not angry at my family anymore. Anger takes energy that I'd rather put into my work, into my employees, into building something that outlasts any family dinner. But I am clear, in a way I wasn't before, about what I owe them and what I don't. I owe them honesty. I owe them professionalism. I owe them the same respect I'd give any other person in a room. I don't owe them my silence about what I've built. I don't owe them the performance of being less than I am so that everyone else can look a little larger. My name is Serena Walsh. I run Walsh Electric Solutions. I have 5 employees, 3 commercial property contracts, and more work than I can comfortably schedule between now and the end of the year. I am no one's footnote, and the next time someone wants to use me as a punchline in front of 300 people, they should probably first check whether I'm the one keeping the lights on. I've thought a lot about the word deserve since all of this happened. People throw it around like it's simple. Like it's easy to know who deserves what and when and why. But what I come to understand, sitting on my kitchen floor with a cat and a cup of coffee that had gone cold, is that deserve has almost nothing to do with how things actually unfold. What matters is something quieter and more practical than deserve. What matters is what you build, and whether you're honest about what you've built, and whether you're willing to stop pretending it's smaller than it is just to make other people comfortable. Serena didn't set a trap for anyone. She didn't scheme or plot or spend months engineering some elaborate payback. She did her job, the way she always had, with a license, a liability policy, a crew that showed up on time, and work that passed inspection. The irony wasn't something she manufactured. It was already there, sitting in a property management portal, waiting for the day she finally stopped looking away from her own worth long enough to see it. That's the part that stays with me. How long she looked away. How many dinners she sat through, hearing, So you're still doing the wiring thing and let it land without answering it. Not because she was weak, because she was trying to be good. Trying to keep the peace. Trying to give people a version of herself they could accept, even when that version required her to erase everything she'd actually accomplished. There's a cost to that kind of shrinking. It accumulates, the same way a small electrical problem accumulates, slowly, invisibly, until one day the panel trips and you understand that the issue was never small. It just hadn't been acknowledged. When Serena stood in that hallway and heard her own aunt describe her as the contrast, the funny footnote, the humble beginning, something tripped. Not into rage. Into clarity. And clarity, I think, is the thing that actually changes outcomes. Not anger, not revenge, not making someone feel as small as they made you feel. Just the clear-eyed decision to stop participating in a story where you've been cast as less than you are. What she sent wasn't a weapon, it was a disclosure. Facts. Her name on a contract, a service ticket that needed to be resolved. The truth of what she had built, stated plainly, without apology. The cause had always been there. Years of real work, real skill, real independence. The effect was simply what happened when she stopped hiding it. The hardest kind of courage isn't the loud kind, it's not the confrontation, not the speech, not the dramatic exit. It's the quiet decision to be accurate about yourself, to say, without drama or performance, this is what I've done, this is what I've done, this is what I know, this is who I am. To stop editing yourself down so that other people don't have to feel the discomfort of having underestimated you. My uncle paid that invoice in full. My mother said the words I'd needed to hear for 6 years, not because anyone was forced to, because the truth, once it was out in the open, didn't leave much room for anything else. I am no one's footnote. I never was. And maybe that's the only thing worth taking from any of this, not the vindication, not the invoice, not even the phone call. Just that, the decision to finally say it out loud and mean it and let whatever follows follow.